Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League show here at Last Three Nation. I am joined this time, obviously, you know the rigmarole by now, is not Dom. He is now off being a washed top laner, being told by Zoomers he doesn't know how any of the roles work. Even though, by the way, I'll just throw this out there because this is a fire detail, if you know what I'm talking about. Actually, the joke is, no one ever gave Dom any credit anyway for his jungle opinions, even though that's obviously been his strongest role the whole time for obvious reasons. But the real joke is this. I have to say, mate, I actually have noticed his actual insight on top lanes got way better since he started playing it. Like, this guy, people don't, just has a good mind for games. Like, he clearly does. Like, and you can tell he's actually got a skill that I would say is my main skill in a game like League that isn't my natural game, which is he's also really good at parsing info from other people, you know. So if someone says something that makes sense, he sort of takes it and builds on it, which is basically my whole skill set, but I don't have the background in the game. So obviously there's no Dom. He will come at some point in time. I have told you before, but he's going to come like Gandalf style when you least expect it, over the hill. And then don't worry, I'll make sure that we make up in that one episode for all the flame to Spanish and French fans that we might have not done before. Although, by the way, you might have noticed, just like me, we sort of got in some mad way enlisted to like the French side of that like European civil war. Obviously, my guest here, Keire, will know all about that because his people, many times to try and fuck my people, they would go and also join the French, believe it or not, at times. In fact, do you know what, guys? In a way, them and the French, if you go through a circuitous method, and also why we lost America. So, you know, if you think the LCS is shit, it's basically his fault. In a really indirect way, but whatever. Anyway, exactly. Keire is here, obviously, and basically, I often give that preamble like he comes from the Discord. But obviously now he's done EuroLeague for quite a while. Actually, how long is that? Like a year and a half or something? 2 years?
Yeah. I think it'll be 2 years now.
Yeah. Oh, no, so
actually, it's been 2.5.
Well, it's been
two and a half years. Yeah. Oh
so
my God. Yeah.
What we're going to do is this. Obviously, loads of these topics have been talked about, but I always stress, obviously on these episodes, we can kind of do it a little bit differently. This isn't going to be like Euphoria, is it? Although the joke on that one is, I noticed the Dive and Euphoria still do that thing where, like, I think it's actually stupid, where if there's ever any problems in, like, outside of the game, stuff like the LCS walkout or now with, like, people getting fired, they'll do this weird thing where, like, I don't think it'd be right to put an episode out this week. It's like, what are you talking about, mate? Like, you know, the league's still running. Like, it's not like a national day of mourning or something. Like, just get on with it. You've still got a job. I'd fucking record content if I were you. They might cut your ass next. Think about it. So, okay, let's get into it. I actually think the first place we start, just because this team previously has been one, the joke is before Carmine Corp came, this was the hot button team in the LEC. It's obviously BDS. And I have to say, Keire, here's what's insane. Normally, people would expect me to do this thing, right? Where, because I personally had BDS as one of the worst teams, I think I had them, I forget if I had them 9th or 8th or something, but I know I had them like way down there. And also, I'm obviously a Crowley friend and fan and supporter. And just in general, I dislike some of their players. And I obviously have reasons because they're fans to dislike them. So people would probably think I'm going to do the angle now of like, it's just BO1s, who cares? But I'm actually not, Keire, because I actually have to say, if I was to go back and rewatch the whole split without nameplates, and so I couldn't possibly have any bias, and I can't remember, you know, the sequences, so I don't know who it is, etc. I'm not joking. I would actually have to conclude for real. This was actually the cleanest team in the LEC. Yeah. It's real. Like, even though part of me obviously has a reason to not want to believe it, I can't deny it. Like, even though SK had the awesome week 1, they had some nightmare games after that. Even though G2 had highs, they certainly looked good. Mate, no one else compares. Like, for real, they actually did earn that like record. And I'll even throw this in there as well. Bearing in mind, as people have pointed out, a lot of people don't put stock in the Carmine Corp win because BDS was already in the next round and Carmine Corp was out. So I don't even take that win as much. And then I've got to say, in general, I just think actually, like, this isn't even a case of where it's like, well, you know, because of BO1s, there's a lot of variance. They pretty much earned all these wins. They actually were the better team. And I'll even say this as well. I've always, if you notice, the one thing I always do, maybe this is my angle. If you notice, I don't tend to overly praise the players on BDS. I often praise the coaching staff. But now you see why. Dude, I actually think their coaching staff, unironically, is really good at drafting and actually seems to be quite good at teaching people how to close games. Those are banger fucking skills if you want to win BO1s, by the way. Like, it's basically how you do it. What do you think of this, Keire? I'm kind of shocked. Like, I never thought we'd be here at this point in time. I was kind of hoping, you know, they'd kind of be, the joke is like Rogue, and then I'd be able to do the whole, you should have kept Crowley, what were you thinking? Fair play. Right now, they were right and I was wrong. So what do you think?
BDS are like really interesting. I actually had 3 of their players evaluated as the best.
I
in
saw
the
you
world
put
by
Adam
then.
as the best in the whole 3 weeks,
Yeah,
right?
so I had Adam as the best top laner, Nuck as the best mid, and Labrov as the best support. And I actually put like a lot of the cadence of how good this team is and where those players' floors at. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this about Nuck and Adam, but like, unfortunately, the regular season reality is what I have to base this opinion on. And Nuck's floor and like his peaks maybe weren't as crazy as someone like Caps or Humanoid, but his floor was unbelievable. He was never bad. Ever bad. He was basically good or great in like every single game. Adam just never had like an off game. Adam like was very effective. This team looks so much more solo lane focused than the Crowny iterative.
Yep.
And you know, Labrov for me when on the Blitzcrank week was basically that entire week for me was entirely 3 wins because he just had the best like understanding of that premium pick at the time. And you know, I said this on a couple of shows. I would prefer a world where like teams like BDS and teams like Mad Lions were like the best teams because they're like team play teams. It's like greater than the sum of their parts.
Oh, sure.
The comeback combo with Nuck on Oriana and Labrov on the Alistar, you know what I mean? If they fuck that combo up, like they probably lose, I think it was either Rogue or Fnatic. But they don't. They land it. They find a way back into the game. You've seen it in the game versus KC. They were like a couple of seconds away from like coming back on bot lane where KC were saging. This team, I think the biggest problem this team had, and the reason the record isn't as sick, is they played G2 in week 1 when it was the worst time for them to play play G2 because they were on that nocturne comp that like looked so unpracticed in the LEC at the time, and they like lost to G2. So I actually think the record's a bit like worse than it could have been. I actually think they might have beaten G2 at a different time of the year. I think a lot of their wins. The only thing in week 1 I was really worried about was they were taking fights away from ice. And I thought, you know, language breakdown, not explaining it to them. Like, right. You know, it's hard to understand English people if you're like Korean, speaking English. Sure. If you stick a French accent on top of that, or if French people are literally speaking French among themselves, it's impossible. But then it kind of like disappeared, and ice has been like fine. I wouldn't sign like any crazies about them. But yeah, BDS has been like a really interesting team to see like evolve over the split. Very different to the BDS of old. Like this time they're great without Shio. I don't think Shio's playing particularly well. I think he has mares all the time. So there's an evolution of this team on the cards where like Shio's playing better, or like, you know, he finds that like spring run of form that he had, and this team could get super dangerous. And for me, I think they were the best team like for what they showed in the league. I don't think it was particularly close.
Yeah, the interesting thing is I can actually give you some insight because I actually know some of the people in BDS, as much as that might shock people, and I obviously know people like Crownshot. So the interesting thing is, the reason why I say I have to actually hold my hands up and say the BDS coaching stuff was right and I was wrong is, look, I can't actually know technically that if you put Crowley in the same games, maybe he even plays better than Ice and then they win even more, look even better. That could be the case as well. But bearing in mind, they essentially have, like we said, looked the best in pretty much all the games. Like their plan or whatever they conceived of is what has come to play on the server. And I can tell you, as you just said, there's the part that this is where I do get slightly annoyed at fans who, you notice, most fans, by the way, when they tell you your opinion's bad or that you're an idiot or that you don't know the game, don't then go on to give you analysis that shows that they have an opinion. All they're saying is just a blanket statement like, you're wrong. And then they don't actually have like a point themselves to counter you, right? So really, that's why I imagine it's probably just emotion they're reacting off, or they don't like the sentiment, or they think you're mean or you're against that, you know, something separate basically. But the reason I bring this up is because how come no BDS fan who's been bragging has ever even pointed out what you just pointed out, which is actually obvious if you think about it. If you contrast this BDS to the one that almost won Spring last year, it's not just like, oh, actually they were right. Ice is a better ADC than Crowley, and then they just play the same way, but now it works. No, the joke is the reason they don't have Crowley and the reason the Ice guy doesn't even need to be vaguely, like you just said, he's not even vaguely the best player on the team. If anything, he really has just been a placeholder whose job actually appears to be, don't be Crown Shot, just be anything else and don't die. And then the joke is, as you said, they used to be a team that obviously, like that's why I always poke fun at Monty, if you notice, when I make that joke that he's doing the Moscow 5 again, when he talks like they strategically tell Adam to press the, so that it frees up. It's like they don't, but that's a very clever way to band-aid Adam. The other way you can obviously play around Adam is you have to play to him. And by the way, that is clearly what is different about this year's BDS. They are a solo lane team, clearly, because the joke now is, it's not even just Shio. Now Labrov's job as well is clearly to help these fucking solo laners. Like, that's just clearly the way the game is set up. And as we say, Ice's job is just get out the fucking way until we tell you to fucking left click, basically. That's about it. So the weirdest thing about this team to me is, I mean, as much as we've all flamed Adam, etc., tell you what, they're playing to him, it looks fucking great at the moment. I can't deny it. And that is, as far as I know, by the way, the main issue they had. They might publicly tell you, like, look, a very good reason in its own right, which is Crowley looked the best on the hyper carries. And if you're not going to have him on that, then he can't, like, play as hard around him. There's a logic to that. But the other part is, inside the org, they won't say it this way, but I'll just tell you, they're incredibly biased towards Adam. Specifically Adam, more even than Nock, right? It's actually, I've even heard Nock sometimes, they actually limited his champion pool to kind of like Niski style, make it more manageable for the comps. Adam's the one, as far as I know, they really do think he is like the truth in that org. They have the whole fucking history planned around him. They think he's brilliant. I've even heard, by the way, maybe I'll do a video on this in the future one day. I've heard he's gotten up in his own way to some sort of like forgiven type shenanigans of bullshit he's pulled internally. So, but with all that said, for now it is working. Like, look, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical once we get to the other matches and once we move on. So, like, for example, if you saw some of the insight, I am still a mark. I did pick Heretics to beat them in this first matchup. You know, I need to believe that the top side turns up in the playoffs and, you know, mind games and all that jazz. So, okay, what I would say is this. How do you project BDS in this next phase, though? Because obviously now, if people don't know, it's sort of the same. We start with best of threes. It's just the main difference is there just isn't two groups. It's sort of best of threes in as if they were in one group. And then the double elim factor means that, like, at a certain point in the upper and lower bracket, you swap to best of fives, which, by the way, if you ever look at how the old playoff was, it's like I say, it's sort of like you combined the two group together from the BO3s last year and then just connected the playoffs at the end. So it's actually quite similar. It's not as crazy as it looks initially, but essentially the cool part is we've got rid of that terminology. Now we can just call this playoffs and we can just talk about how they'll do. And so obviously you can start in BO3 and you're going to go later at BO5. So obviously we have to take that into account. How do you project in playoffs? What are your expectations for BDS? Like, based on what we've just said, it should be possible to win. This should be possible to win the split, right?
Yeah, like, here's the thing. Like, because the team you've got to contrast them for me, like, and that's what, like, kind of show. So there's like two teams that I think are like good going in. Like G2, I think the expectation is they have to win every single split, like without a doubt, and they should be winning them relatively comfortable if their aspiration is to do things internationally, right? It doesn't look to me going into playoffs that G2 has like ramped up anywhere near to the level that they need, and they might be caught lacking in terms of like catching up to BDS, because right now, you know, it's there's a good couple of series. I think it's they have, because they're 1 and 2, they can only meet at the BO5 section. So that's like the saving grace for them. But in terms of actually just going, and the other good thing for like just to point as G2 is they have like a winning record against all the top teams like in the league going in. They only lost to like Vitality and Rogue. So they've beaten all the top teams, even though it's BO1. But I actually think BDS is going to go really, really well. They're a really tricky team to deal with in draft. You've got a lot to ban out. Going into 4.2, which I think is the patch it's going to be played on, there is a little bit of like concern around I think it's a patch, like Karma Top and stuff like that, and how like abusable that is. If Adam's not going to play Karma Top because it's not really in his style, then BDS then maybe picks up a permaban, which is usually the thing they have over other teams in terms of like the Olafs and the Renekton. But if people want to fall back onto like Casantes and stuff versus Adam, you know, he is going to just pick the Garen into you, and no one's really shown like a bona fide like solution to it. It like basically it just looks like on what it should be an almost like industry standard like counter to Cassante, the same way you've seen a variety of them across, you know, Nar, you had like a Rally and stuff in the past, like Chasey pulled out in playoffs. So I think BDS, and the good thing is they're not so much tied to like any crazy individual like player having to like pop off. A lot of it is just really smart, like timings on skirmishes and taking good like objective control and letting the players that have got resource leads get themselves into damage pockets and coordinated like team fights. And that's, even though, you know, other people can like team it, and out team fight you, and that's where the inconsistency comes. It has its own form of consistency in terms of you're not like dying on one person to like, you know what I mean, carry a massive team fight in terms of damage. So I just think they'll do really, really well going into the playoffs. I think anyone that's got them's got like a lot of prep on their hand in terms of like Sophie's choices of like the pick ban. And it looks like it looks like it's most likely going to be a pretty good meta for them going into like playoffs of like what is strong. So they should look pretty happy, and they should be, put it this way, if they don't win like the playoffs, they can consider this an almost similar level of failure to the previous one where they lost to Mad Lions, where realistically you should be looking to try and win this. You know what I mean? Take this one off of G2 in all reality.
Yeah, one thing I would just throw out there is I actually think the other thing that the BDS squad has proven is that when you have these really strong, look, I know it's just colloquial to say one trick. Obviously, he's like a 2 or a 3 trick, isn't he? So like, but you get what I mean by that. We just mean like individually, sort of one tricks 3 different champions, and that's about it, right? First of all, there's the other thing. Even though I dislike the guy as a person, I have to give credit to his game. He has also leveled up. Like, the joke now is he actually can play a Renekton and stuff like that. It's not just going to be an instant loss or like, lol, he's not like, if you took the inputs off, he looks fine on LEC on that level. He's not the best on those champions, but he's okay on them. And by the way, even when people memed, he had the odd Scion game last year that was totally plausible and he could make work, etc. So first of all, it's not as limited. It's not like you can only ban him out. But the problem with this is when someone has unique champions, there's obviously 3 logical approaches you can take. 1, you just ban him out. 2, you can say, I'll just basically pick a matchup that works into that champion. Or 3, you can try picking it yourself. Now, my problem is this. The obvious one to me, if you can, like you're saying, there's obviously an economy of bans. You don't have unlimited bans to throw at him. If you can, you try and just ban his out. It's the most obvious one because then it reduces your downside and it reduces his upside. I would say personally, the one in the middle is the one most people default to, which is I can handle it. And then they think they can play their matchup against it. That's like, I'd say it's sus because it depends. I've seen even some of the fucking Asian top players almost fuck that up.
Lost.
Yeah, so that one's dangerous, but I get why they do it. I actually think the third one is the worst, mate, is when they think like, I'll just pick Darius. It's like, that makes no sense at all. 1, you aren't him, so you're not going to have the upside. 2, in this scenario, he's played every Darius matchup, so he actually also knows, if he's smart, how to infer what someone can do against him on Darius that's hard. And then 3, mate, like, also, isn't this a world where, like, your team doesn't play fucking Darius in comps? Like, how are you going to make that work? So to me, that's the thing with Adam, which actually, sadly, still plays to their favour, is no one's figured out yet what route are we going to take against this guy? How do we consistently shut him down? If you notice, what they tend to do is it's almost like they have a spin wheel and they go, for this game, we are going to ban the Olaf. And then the next time, we can handle it this time. And you know what? This time, we're going to take it. It's like, I'm not a fan of that approach. So, by the way, I agree with you. There will always be draft edges for BDS if things go as they currently are. If we switch to G2, here's the interesting thing on this one, Keire, is I'll just start you off like this, because I'm going to set you up and then I'll go in. I've got a bunch of thoughts on all the G2 players, because I also agree, actually, the floor has been really shocking, this fucking split. Like, I mean, it's not even an understatement, mate. BDS had a way better floor than G2. If anything, G2 could even steal some of their games because they just have such good players. But I'll tell you what's mad. I did see your list of who the good players are. And I have to say, mate, I'm actually on the same page, which is one of the reasons why in a minute, after you do your bit, I'm going to flame a few players from G2, is because I actually think this time around, some of them were propped up by people like Yike. Mm-hmm. I actually think Yike, no joke, had a banger split. Probably was the best jungler, right?
Yeah, like, the problem is, to me, like, I'll flame them as well. I think the absolute arse has fallen out of like Hans Sama's game for some strange and unknown like reason, right? Like BB has been like, he had, you know, the BB having a large champion pool is something you can always say about BB, right?
Yep.
But, and it's in this confine of like, what was he actually doing? Like, my friend had a really good way of saying it. G2 is the best platform for any player to play from. So when you're on G2, it's not good enough to just be mediocre. You have to excel. Particularly if you're somebody like BB, who, the idea is you're going to be taking them forward into these like Asian team matchups. It's like, yeah, BB looked fine against like all the EUs. And then he played against Bin, and Bin like psycho fucked him. And it was like, it's completely unbearable. So to me, this G2, which is really what it was like Mickey X and Yike have to carry the map by playing psychotically aggressive, like on a knife's edge, like with bot push and attempt to like get the most minutiae of edges and then if that doesn't work where it's like backfired on them a couple of games, it's into mid-game turtle hold and hope to God Hansama and Caps can scale up to start like winning team fights. Like the Fnatic game was just nonsense. Like the fact that they won that game, it was like Caps was unbelievable.
Oh, you don't celebrate.
Talent.
That's an exact. That's why you know that's what it said on Twitter. I'm Fnatic. I don't feel bad about that. That's the game where you just tip your hat, like they say in basketball. If they hit the shot, you just tip your hat. Fair enough. You shouldn't win that, but if you hit it, you hit it.
And the thing was, is like, so last winter, okay, I thought Yike was amazing because Yike was, as a rookie, taking bot leads and blowing these gold leads up, like 5,000 gold leads, like 20 minutes, you know, but like Hansama would be on the Draven and Mickey X, and I'd be like, you know, and that's what I'm saying, the platform's there, like how good could you get the gold lead? Like a bad jungler would maybe only get 1 or 2, but Yike would push this massive advantage. Now, Yike's had to transform where there's like, it's not a winning bot lane all the time, and it's all this like map control and fixing lanes, and it's way more controlled. Like, you know, you still see the Lilia games, right? But we had, with the map changes, we've never seen like any Belveth, we've seen a lot more of like, you know, that hybrid version of like Yike this like time round. And so I think that's really not so much like scary, but like for me, one of the things you could always depend on for like a win for G2 was, you know, the bot lane was going to have like advantages, and it was like Yike would be able to go there to like find the 4-man way dive. Now it looks way more that like Mickey X and Yike are having to go do things for their like laners to then get the advantage. It's not step 1 in the track, it's like step 2. So it was a really impressive split from him, to be honest. This season, it looks like he really like his floor was unbelievable. Like this year, where like I thought like Mickey had some dicey like early games, then like his mid games and late games were like crisp, like really really good. Like that Zyra game, like for the first 5 minutes he was like inting, and then it was like the next 25 he was a god. So you know we can take them. I think there's a lot of questions for G2. I'm really worried for them because they didn't show any dominance, and they're supposed to be by far the best team.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I actually think just from interviews, I have some good insight on this. Because first of all, I definitely agree with the Broken Blade one, right? If you take into account that he had probably the best jungler, he actually had a fucking very humdrum split so far. Like, when is this guy? Where are the pop-offs? Where's all the big? Where are the consistent leads and solo kills and always up and say? No, actually, he's actually been something of a passenger so far. I've got to say at times, Broken Blade. Like as you say, the real question is if I drop him in any other team, what happens? You know what I mean? I think even in Fnatic he'd struggle, mate, because Oscar has to carry some games sometimes. So I don't know. I do feel like Broken Blade, and then the obvious other one. The joke is Caps has had the games that were the not as good games, especially on the first week. But obviously, I mean, the pop-offs he had in the last week sort of make you think at least he's still in there. The real problem, that person I'm scared about, is Hansama, because here's the issue, right, is I've done all these interviews about, like, the good G2 from last year, or when he was in the old Rogue, and yeah, they all tell you all these brilliant things, Keire, like, oh, if you put him on his champion, you know, like, he will literally shot call the whole map, like, he'll tell you in a group, he'll literally tell, like, apparently, by the way, this is brilliant, apparently, like, in laning phase, he's so obsessed with 2v2 laning, that he actually, for real, like, plans out the waves and tells his jungler stuff like, right, you're going to come on like waves 3, 7 and 10 or whatever, and the idea is then he can tell his support like, right, we're going to set up like, so he comes now and then we like get the wave in this. If people don't know, that's quite advanced for a Western player. There are players who aren't doing that at all. And so here's the problem though, Keire, it sounds like all of that combined on his best champions is making people put his like basic level too high. That's like the best case scenario. What I've heard is this: because he has this like obsession with like lane focus and like basically I have to get all ahead and get all my resources, and then when I do, like, we'll carry the game from me. Basically, I've heard, first of all, one, and this is alarming, supposedly the reason why that Team Liquid team didn't work is because Bjergsen was the opposite. Whereas Hansama essentially is trying to like smash lane and then accelerate the game and just win immediately off, like, I'll just say colloquially 2 items because you'll know like the point in the game. Bjergsen's whole thing at that point in time was, I play a really safe mage. I really carefully min-max like side laning, and then I just try to like get to the end of the game and scale, and then the idea is I essentially like shore up all the chances to lose and then just win at the end by default almost, which is the joke if you saw him in TSM. That's what he did for many years. That works like a motherfucker in LCS. Apparently Hans Sama didn't fuck with that at all, mate, and that was like a complete style clash, and that's why these two players both looked shit. And so the real concern I have is this. It sounds like, and if you think of some of the champions he's picked this split, it sounds like if he's not on the champions he conceives of the game that way, it just becomes essentially like a good ADC, but not anymore. The player, if you think last year, the reason why everyone was hyped going into Worlds was essentially like all the picks they were doing at that time, they looked amazing. Like obviously everyone knows the fucking like some of the bot lanes they had, they were like the only ones playing them. So I just think the concern people have is like, it's the same, it's essentially why Crownie's not in the league. If you switch the ADC pool, ADC's always been a position where people do just spam 2 or 3 champions. Like there still aren't that many ADCs could play all styles of ADC, mate, or even want to. And in this case, if it was like, if he had a shot calling component, but it's tied to his champion pool, it makes sense that the team's not as good when he isn't as good and he's not kind of in his comfortable position. So on that one, I don't even know what you do. You just have to sort of like hope it fucking comes around again. But right now, you're not in the best spot. So actually right now as well, there's another thing. Is it, I noticed on your list, here's another funny one. Another one that's going to upset people is, because we can pivot and talk about them if you want, is obviously you put Kazi as your best ADC, right? Guys, you've got to stop thinking about past splits. We don't mean like if you had to draft someone, who would you pick, right? You probably would still pick Hansama over Kazi. But on this split, he's the reason Vitality has any wins, mate. What are we even talking about here? You know what I mean? Meanwhile, as we're saying, like, if Hansama actually played well, maybe G2 would have been top of the league. Like, him and Broken Blade basically have to ask themselves some questions of, like, why didn't our team win all the games in this
exactly.
So go on then, give me the Vitality angle, because, look, Vitality is obviously quite a flawed team, but I tell you what, there's a reason they've won games and been in a lot of games to win them, so give me your thoughts on this team.
So, like, my thing was going in is it's like, okay, so VTO, Photon, and Karze theoretically could be the best cores of the LEC. They could be better than G2 like once you get them to like team fights. Maybe not in laning. VTO has described it. The problem is like Photon just wasn't that player this split. He was like pretty underwhelming. And the opening of it, like VTO was even struggling to, when given resources, like translate them into actual map wins. But it got better as it went along. Now, outside of the Lucian game where he was like, he had a Xerath on his team, I actually think Karze in all the other games, and maybe not the gym one, was like giving his team the best chance to win with a categorical A-class inter in his lane. I have never seen Halisang play so bad in my fucking life. He is straight up dogging and losing. And the problem is Vitality's best chance to win any game, right, is sitting right next to him. And Karze is just stuck in this horror world of like, do I follow Hilly's play and try and get something out of it, or do I just like completely abandon it? And you can kind of see in a lot of the situations he's like torn between them. I do not think you could take any ADC in the league, stick them on Vitality, and like I don't think many of them would have won the games that the Karze was in. That on-hit Varus game where Karze started building tank items to sit in the middle of the fight against Team Heretics and just like tank damage and frontline as Varus, it's like a Karze only like thing. You're like, nobody else is doing that because it is psychotic and it is lunacy, but it's the only way you're going to win that game. And this team just, all the life force of it just got like sucked out with how bad Hilly is. And the thing is that I can be more sympathetic to someone like Douglas on the team, where I don't think he's like good, but supposedly like Douglas is like a more of a dedicated like carry player, and he's like being serviced into the idea of like, you know, he's got to help VTO with his lane,
right?
Yeah, he's got to help VTO with his lane. Photon's an aggressive lane pusher, and then bot lane. People didn't realize when Halisang's like entering these bot lanes, Douglas is then having to move to then cover bot dives and cover like resets so that Karze can then get back up to the wave and farm. And so he's really stretched. Now his own independent play, you know, it's like skill shot accuracy, he's engages. The things that are in his control, they've not been great. I can't say they have. But I'm more sympathetic to the absolute madness that has been Halisang. And for me, like, this is a team that looks like they should be punching upwards. But I think unless, like, Karze and V2 will just go X mode, God mode, right? Or SK Gaming, like, have a complete chokeout, there's no way they can beat SK. Like, you're basically, you're creating, like, a theoretical space where what do you call it? You're just hoping for like both your carries to like pop off. Because when I see like SK even have like their good to mid-level games, it should just wipe the floor with Vitality. Because really that's kind of where it is. Unless Hellesang, for playoffs can, he might be just one of those players that's just done with regular seasons and he can try and bring his floor up like he did in spring. Outside of that, I think they've been really poor.
One thing I would really love to see, because obviously now that we've seen it with Carmine Corp and Excel last year, low-key, I just want to hear all the comms to all the teams. Then I won't have to speculate, I'll know. Because, mate, when I watch this team, I'm not saying this even, like people might think this is like some forced, like fucking, like, xenophobic angle or something mental, mate. But like, I genuinely wonder after watching him playing this and the last Vitality, how well Photon understands English. I'm being serious when I say that. Because, mate, like, this split began kind of like how last year was. He was looking great the first week. It's looking like, oh, he's in Elo hell again, isn't it? Like, he gets the lead in lane, but they don't play to him. And then when they group, he's not with them or they don't play for it. And it's like, yeah, but mate, the problem is now this is different teammates that this is happening with. This is totally different mid laner and jungle. Like, mate, we're swapping up totally different players and you're doing the same thing. And on top of that, now his game's dropped off a bit. Like, as you say, it started out well, but he actually hasn't been that great the last few weeks. So Photon right now, unfortunately, he's kind of wasted time, it feels like. Like, the joke is, he's basically all the insults people used to say about Alfari, except at least Alfari presumably can understand English. Insert jokes about the Welsh. But you know what I mean? Like, at least he actually understands English, obviously. He was obviously just choosing when to group where somehow they haven't managed to make the Photon thing work. And that was one of the players, by the way, that I was sort of hoping that like the Mac factor would come in and do something with and, sort of be able to like integrate him into the squad because it's supposed to be one of his strengths, isn't it? Then you go and look. So already in top lane, basically, it's not that he's like a liability, but you don't have a strength you thought you would have. I'm with you. They could actually, in a real world, the reason why, if anyone wonders, I had this team like fourth or something on my like preseason list, is because I really thought, dude, there's a world where like all three main laners could be like top three in their roles. Like this could be the power could be really there on this team. Obviously, I didn't know the Douglas guy, but the real problem is this as well. I put him with faith in fucking Hillsang. Tell you what, I've learned my lesson this time because I'm with you, mate. That last year, even when he hinted, it's like you could do that thing where it's like it's well intentioned. He was going for something there. He was trying to force the action or keep the players the tempo. That shit. Bro, this is like that last split in Fnatic. This is like that Nightmare Fuel one where if you were upset, I mean, the joke is fucking Kazi should just reach out to upset immediately and just go like, right, what do I do with it? Is it like sleeping pills? Do I need half a glass of red wine at the end of the night? What is it? How do you get through this shit? Do I need hot stone massage? Because I'm fucking stressed right now. Because as you say, the worst thing is this. Vethio is just Vethio. We know who he is now. The good news is he's an own quantity. Look, I'll give it up to every doubter. I was wrong when he was in Misfits. I did actually think, essentially, that he was a more self-sufficient player than he is. And so I actually don't think he deserves to be called like a true star player, in my opinion. Look, he does have skill, and when you get him to that point in the game on his shot, he can do it. But the point is, see all that, but if like that, I don't have to say that about the other really good mid laners. The best mid laners in Europe especially, they're totally self-sufficient stars. If anything, you play for them because you'd be an idiot not to. That's how you win the game. This guy, you have to play for him just so he'll give you a chance to win the game later. And then lastly, so think about it, I've gone from top there, I've gone from mid. Right, I agree with you. Kazi's actually a banger player, but then an Inter is in his lane. So, like, we don't have any lane we can win through on this team. That's why if you look, the joke is they have been in loads of close games, but you may as well for real flip a coin when it gets to that point for this team because that's all Hillesang's doing. Like, is he going to fuck this game up or is he going to allow us to win? Like, he's had a couple of screamers. He's even had one that he won. I forget exact one. I remember there was one that he won where he was playing like shit, but they like sort of won in spite of him. And I'm like, fucking hell, bro. Like, because I'm with you. The real problem as well you've got here is this. As the aforementioned Crownie knows only too well, this isn't the meta to have just the ADC be good and then win the game, mate. Like, we've got to have something elsewhere on the map. So, for me, I have to say, even though they've come into the playoffs looking all right, because it's a bit of a scuffed split, and they've definitely had some quality wins if you look at some of the teams they've beaten, I don't have a lot of faith either, mate. Like, my assumption immediately is that SK should beat them. Look, SK have their own flaws, which is why you can be a bit worried, like if you look at the betting odds, for example. But I do think on paper, SK just look way cleaner. There's a logic to how they play, who they play through, who is strong. In Vitality, like, as we're saying, some of the parts are almost fighting each other, which is not a great scenario to be in. And quite frankly, if you're going to do that whole thing of like the coach is going to fix it, then he probably needs more time than the first 3 weeks. You know what I mean? This isn't like he walks in and it's just fixed in. He's not a magician, guys. If anything, this is like some full-on fucking Pygmalion project where he's going to have to gradually over time level them up and make them more sophisticated and fit together. So if they can, look, I'll give him this much. Because of how they started now, if they do manage by the end of the season to be really awesome and go to Worlds, then they must have done a great coaching job. They must have fucking killed it, because the team that has right now, look, because we've got people like Carmen Copley, I can't say it's like a bad team, but it's kind of like a bit meh, you know? Because the one thing I'm underwhelmed about the team is, like, where's the sort of punching power? Like, if I have an underdog team, Keire, I just want a chance to, like, this is why I think SK is the best opposite version. SK shouldn't win the league, but I tell you what, they've got a dark horse chance to. If everything goes great and the right players, maybe it could happen. I actually think it's impossible for Vitality to win. I don't think there's a world where they could do it.
But it's like literally like light and darkness. Like SK has got like a mid laner who like can't really like lane very well, but he makes up for it in other ways.
Yep.
They have a stable lane focused like split pushing like carry hybrid player and irrelevant, but he speaks English. They've got a rookie jungler, but he's actually good and
Smurfing.
And then their bot lane is Exakick DOS, which is like a pairing bot lane, the same as Karzi Halisang, where now we're in a world talking about DOS being better and more consistent than Halisong, right? And Exakick, right, okay, he's the only person who's not better than his counterpart, but the problem is he's playing from a much better platform, much better dynamics, and the thing is Exakick usually like executes on them, like he's very safe in that like sense. He usually executes on the lead that he gets. So I've spoken to Mac once or like twice on like shows, right? And the thing I liked about like Mac is he didn't like bullshit me. He actually spoke like about like coherent like team identities and like draft ideas and what things were supposed to be. And you know, I mean, I don't know anything about his coaching, but the idea that like he kind of like knew who he was like drafting for like his players and his team, I think that is like an upside on like what he's got here. I just think the coaching staff have got like a lot of issues to deal with quickly. The only thing I can say like is like good about them is if you get into the whole like, you know, playoff vibes, like playoff like jitters, you know what I mean, if you get to those later team fights where and the game's not completely wrecked, like Vithio and Karze, that is like a place that they can like carry from, but I don't know what like gold leagues you're going to be having. Like it really is sad to like for me that like it looks like one of the perennial best pieces in EU is possibly going to go the whole year wasted on like a middling to like upper team, but it's kind of that's kind of basically the way it's looking.
I mean, the problem is that's like a big old LEC problem anyway. Like, the thing I hate about the LEC right now is you can look at every team from the bottom up, and every team has like one player that should like be contended for the title, but stuck in Elo hell basically. So you can pick different spots for different teams, obviously. By the way, that's the other thing as well that I do not like about the Vitality team is this. When I was going through all the different possible like players and how they might play, the problem is like the one player I obviously would never have picked for this team is the Douglas guy. They just chose already within Vitality they were going to bring him in, and they had that idea last year. You know, that was just set in their minds. I don't know if he was cheaper, what it was. I would just say that would be the most obvious position I'd potentially upgrade. Like if I look at their teammate and I think of different junglers I could slot in, I think you could make this team better a lot quicker. I mean, the joke is, even some of the ones that aren't big names, like maybe I would even take like Marcoon or something, like, you know what I mean? Someone like that might even be, I feel like someone who can service the lanes a bit more. That's maybe what I want. Because I'm with you. The vibe I get from the Douglas guy is he's just been told your job is to hold Vethio's hand. And he's like, but that's not how I got here. Like, it's not my game. Like, the reason you want me is because I'm like a jungler from the RLs. It's a star or something. So I think they've just missed a trick on that one. They haven't paired the right jungler with him, it seems.
The real meme is they've got self-made in their tier 2 team. Is like, do you want to run it back with a self-made, what's he called, Halisang? It's been reported to me that he's like not playing like that well. Or it's not like he's like smashing like tier 2 or anything. So it's not like, oh, definitely do this. It's just fun. It would just be like one of those funny things. Like it's like, well, boys, it's like crack open the cold ones or running it back.
No, it's basically like that joke, that fucking Loki meme, isn't it? Like, you must be pretty desperate to come to me, fella. Yeah, no shit. If people don't know, by the way, I shouldn't tease too many of these, because then dickheads do that thing where they just make your life a nightmare and just ask you every day, where's the video? Even though you make like a free video where you don't, you know, take like the opportunity cost of your working life and make a video about some shit. But in the same way as I'm going to do a video about a certain Swedish ADC, and then let's say maybe a certain Czech mid laner. I'll keep going through some of the enigmatic ones. Part of me thinks I should do a self-made one because, first of all, spoiler, the reason I am the way I am about him is I've just heard too many straight fire stories about this twat. But here's the one that I'll tell you for now. I'll drop this little gem for now. Even some of the people who like him, Keire, as in they will defend him and they think he's... By the way, everyone thinks he's really skilled. He actually does have really, really strong mechanics. Like, I'm not joking. He has, like, among the best mechanics you'll probably ever see for a jungler. But here's his problem. Even some of the people who like him said to me, he basically is just a solo queue player. Like, he doesn't get the team game. He doesn't understand, like, adapting. So the joke, and the problem when he said that was that immediately you just do that thing like LS says where you flash all the images in the game that you're like, oh, holy shit, they're right. He is just the guy who just carries the game from jungle. That's it. He has his champions. He fights all the time, uses mechanics, and he just wins it. So the real downside is, like, he wouldn't fix this team. You just probably would win a couple of games if you had like a Lilia or something. You know what I mean? Like he'd have a carry game or two though. But yeah, it is something of a meme. I know what you mean. Right, let's flip it then. Obviously, as you say, we'll do the matchups. Let's do the SK side. So you gave like an overview there. Here's the problem I have right now is, if I do the sporting thing that I like to do, of like, I know the payroll for SK isn't huge. I know that, like, in terms of who was available in the game of musical chairs in the offseason, they couldn't have gotten all the big names, mate. Look, I will say there were worlds where they could have had, like, Larson, etc. But if you look at who they've ended up with, they've done a pretty good job again. I think they're a pretty well GM team relative to what they've got. That problem is this. If you look at the resources they have, they're actually punching above their weight. Like, they are a contender. Like, the joke is, mate, if I had to list right now, gun to my head, who wins the LEC, I'd probably have them third or fourth. Like, I think it's really plausible. If I look at who else is out there, my issue is, because they are, like, sort of a budget team with some min-maxes and some, like, shrewd decisions, there's obviously, like, certain areas where they're not the strongest, and there's certain areas where they have holes. So, here's my question. What do you like about SK, and then what worries you about them? Because I do notice, even when they're at the best, nobody ever goes all in and goes, I think they're going to win this, but no one's ever said that lie. Even they don't say that, mate. So what do you like, but then also what's holding you back? Because something's holding us all back, I feel like.
So I'll give you, okay, so in week one, okay, they had like really, really good macro. Now, I hate narratives. I despise narratives, because what narratives tend to do is they override the reality of what's in, like, the game.
Sure.
And so, it's not that I despise that, because I always said Niske works well with all his junglers. Like, he works well with, like, Blabber, Aloya, Whipple jungle. But what the thing was, is like, is it that Niske works well with them, or are these good junglers that he just happened to play with? You know what I mean? But, like, now that he's done the Esma one, I can buy more into this narrative that this guy has not played Tier 1 League of Legends for a single fucking second, and he looks really good with, like, Niske. So, like, okay, I can handle that one, and I can give some, like, props. And I even think, like, the post, like, laning, where, like, Niske isn't, like, a guy that, like, min-maxes and stuff. I think he's, like, been pretty good, like, borderline, like, underrated. Like, the KC game that they lost to when he was on, like, Corki, some, like, unfortunate stuff happened that game where Sakin outplayed because of mechanics. And, like, Niske was, like, doing really well. The reason, just to go back to your point, that I think a lot of people don't, like, really take them, is, first of all, it's kind of like that star power. It's like, they've not got, like, the dedicated, like, and they might not call it star power. They might call it just something, like, whatever, like, they want to call it. When they, like, win, like, games and stuff like that, outside of, like, Executive, because it's just what, like, ADC is like, It is very, like, formulaic and, like, breakdown. I would never go say, like, when I watch them, their team fighting is anything like BDS's, like, can be. Like, the problem with the SK games is, like, when they're front running from their lanes and their early jungling and stuff like that in their early games, going into their mid games, that's all good. And when they front run the game, it looks great. When the game goes against them, like, that is some of the stuff where I think, is their mid game is, like, watertight as someday, like, we'll come to this later on, well, I've got reasons for this, like Fnatic and, like, G2s, where, like, they can find advantages even in ridiculous deficits. I don't think they've got that, like, creativity or that, like, player, like, knowledge on them now. But for the first 15 minutes, they look amazing. And that will win you a lot of League of Legends games. I think until they're kind of, like, proven and pushed by, like, the more, like, elite team, we'll kind of find out. I don't think it's completely out of the, like, the ordinary to say they would win. It's just there is just some sort of, like, disconnect, not so much disconnect, but, like, the unreliance of, like, when I see they're, like, 5k, 6k down, Like, I don't think there's like a chance they're going to come back into the game, and it is just like a slow bleed out. Where when I've watched G2 and BDS, I've seen it too many times now during the reg that it's been fed to me that like there is a chance that they can come back into this game and like steal it back. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to like verbalize, but I do agree with that concept that like even as good as they are, you don't. No one like dives on that kind of like hill for whatever reason.
Yeah, the problem I have with SK, I think you actually framed it well there in terms of like the win conditions, is basically if they get leads and in the right lanes, then they actually can be quite clean and they can look pretty good. And actually that's another area where Nisqy can do some great work in the mid game. My problem as well is I also do think, first of all, I actually do think just a flaw of the roster construction is this thing where supposedly at the request of Exekick, DOS has to be the support. Like, I'm not going to hate on him like I would have last year. He's all right, but he's clearly not anywhere close to a top support in my opinion. Like, the difference is, again, if I drop in a bunch of good supports here, doesn't this bot lane just become super powerful? Doesn't this team become even more powerful? Doesn't the win conditions just grow? So there's one thing. And then, because I actually think the rest of the team's pretty well put together. And then the other factor for me is this. What you just described, though, is probably one of the worst ways to win if you aren't a team with the best players. Because when the playoffs come and you get more nervous, this is why, actually, if people don't know, if you watch the NBA in the modern day, as much as everyone says that line, that like 3-point shooting has ruined the game, it has in a sense, because that's just all people play the styles. But actually in the playoffs, it doesn't just win you the championship, believe it or not, because there's loads of games where people get tight, they get nervous. And when you get nervous, the further away you are, the more likely you are to miss, because now any
your form breaks down.
So the problem with that style is first of all, it's really hard for any team to just have leads at the beginning of every game. It's actually why I always did say I thought people did underrate the rogue squads. Like, mate, Freddie 122 had to be killing those drafts if he was getting like 2 or 3 lanes ahead every BO1. Like, that's hard. But the other problem is when you get in the playoffs and you have some inexperienced players and you all play a little bit tighter. I mean, I'm immediately thinking of the Isma guy if you get the BO5s. There's immediately where B-Way's going to get tested. And then I'm thinking of people like DOS. And then there's going to be a lot of pressure in some of these games when it's like a close game, but it's 35 minutes. Now Exekick's not just going to have to carry. He's going to have to carry from like a mid to behind scenario. Like, this is where I can see them having my problems is the problem. That's basically why I sort of do see them. I actually think they'll even go like that. I think in the BO3s, they'll run through and they'll be in position to be like 3rd or 4th. And then maybe that's when they'll fuck it up and they'll drop a series and they'll suddenly be like 4th or whatever it'll be at the end of the split. And maybe they won't like fulfill the potential. But the sad thing is though, like I say, if you're just framing the sport in context of what was possible, they've actually still done a great job. To even be where they are is about the upper band of what was even possible. Like, if I never even would have imagined I would say the statement like they could win the league. Like, it's not impossible now.
The crazy thing is, and this is one of the things that not taints it, but it's how bad the G2 loss was. Like, kind of really does like dent. Like, put it this way, we weren't putting a lot of stock in Hans Sama, right? But my God, did he make like Exokick and DOS look? You know what I mean? He was bitching on them a bit. Like, it was like, kind of, the king is the king because he's the king. You have to take the crown off his head, you know? And like, it was a little reminder to like those that are playing that like, I'm not finished yet. Like, you've not won anything yet. So, yeah, that's like some, and also, obviously, I actually put the littlest amount into the KC loss. Not because it was KC, by the way. Let me just say, it was actually the way that the game like turned against them because it required like that ridiculous Nico interaction where like obviously the skill shot goes through the Nico and Exekick flashes forwards it and that's what starts it. I put like less like thing into that. Like, if that happens to you, it happens. Like, at the end of the day, you've been done.
Yes.
But you know what I mean?
That's basically we need to make a term because you guys don't have it in League, but you know from CSGO. We just see you've been CSGO'd, you know, when you do it at the Nico and you miss. There needs to be a League version of that because the amount of times that something wacky happens in the game, it's like you just got to take it, mate. That's just the game, innit? Just enjoy getting fucked by the game, you know?
Yeah.
And also, by the way, spoiler, there's another problem actually people don't complain about enough with the Riot champion design. Now, the problem, in my opinion, isn't the idea that they're all super overtuned like that. Obviously, they are when they're released, but that's the way it always was with any champion. The real problem the modern Riot champions have is they're so complicated in what their kits can do that it just takes too long for people to figure it out. Like, the joke is, it's actually only until now that people have a sense of how to even play against Nico and LEC, bro. And the joke is, like, if you watch the LPL, that just shit on everyone the entire last year, guys. There's a reason why at Worlds, like that night, like fucking 4-man one was like God. It's people even now. Some of them are still a bit sketchy against that champion. It's why you don't even have to be the best on it. You can just make it work. It's why it doesn't surprise me. Nook plays it all the time. Actually, it's pretty effective for him.
what's really funny is it was like Caps was one of the first people.
Yes.
It was like one of the first people that illustrated not like because like everyone knew it, but the actual problematic design where if you like turret dive, you could turn into the cannon minion and tank the turret and take the reduced damage from the turret shot.
Oh, it's mental,
and
isn't
yeah, and he takes like 9 turret shots, and then mid laner's just like. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And everyone in the crowd's cheering. Like the fucking gladiators. And it's like they bring out 3 lions to fight you, and everyone's applauding and roaring. And you're like, this is fucking bullshit. It's like, what is going on here? I'm not supposed to win this.
Right, I tell you what then, let's pivot. You mentioned them already. Let's do the Fnatic one then. Because obviously, I actually think Fnatic, funnily enough, when they kept the lineup and just replaced like Trimby with Jun, I was like, it's not a very sexy off-season. But I'll tell you what, even though I'm not a huge Fnatic fan, looks like holding was like not a bad decision. Like it's just the joke is, as everyone else has made fucked up rosters and fucked up their off-season, they've just been able to hold in almost the same spot they're in before. They're just like a good team. Here's the thing though, I actually get the sense it's the opposite from SK. This is where star power does matter, Keire. Because even though I would say they're very similar to SK, I think actually the joke is in their case, it's not cohesive, it's actually individual players. They could individually be a dark horse and win and be like the 3rd or 4th team, Keire. I'll put them in there. My problem is more they don't have the team concept that I think SK does. So I actually think the joke is, you notice the fan reaction is the opposite. No one will say SK will win, but I think people secretly do think Fnatic can win. I think they do. I notice whenever Fnatic has a good game, people seem to want that to be their level. They don't want to acknowledge like that they have a bad game next or like someone play. They want to, like, for example, this is the reason why I might make a video about the certain Czech mid laner, is because all he has to do is have a good game and everyone believes him again. Have you noticed that? Like the second he has a good game, he's like one cunt hair below Caps for everyone instantly. He just transforms like that. Like it's like one good game from him in a BO1 is like the Men in Black, like remove your memory device. Like what? Oh, I'm with Humanoid. What is this, 2021? Like, it's mad for me, because even though he is good, he still has those games, mate, where like he just doesn't give a fuck. So where's Fnatic at for you? This is a hard team to evaluate, in my opinion. It's one of the hardest.
Okay, so this is my most. Even I know this is going to sound mental. Okay, so let me put it up here. Okay, so Fnatic have not beaten any of the teams above them. They've literally lost. The teams they lost to were Mad Lions, FK, Team BDS, and G2. So everyone that's above them, those are the teams they all lost to, right? Okay, but in all of the games that they lost, right, in those actual individual games when you watched them, they were still good. Like actual Fnatic in all of those games were like good. Like the FK Gaming one, Oscar Innen fucks up against Irrelevant, right? Because Irrelevant's just Oscar's dad for some strange reason, right? And it's like a 2,000 gold lead, and Fnatic, through these really great like split pushing maneuvers and great side laning from Oscar, get the gold lead all the way back down to like 800, and it's really, really impressive. They still lose the game, but like they come back from a deficit, an early game deficit that basically I've barely seen any team in the league. The G2 team, the G2 loss was they just got G2'd, like, you know what I mean? That's the tip your hat. And the Team BDS one was a game where I actually thought it was very, very the Team BDS and the Team SK game ones, they were also very winnable. And everyone below them, I think they were quite handled. I think their record is rather deceiving, because for me, this is the first time where I've actually seen the Fnatic like top side is actually a coherent unit. They basically have went from like a perennial ADC franchise. They are now like a solo lane. This team is like Oscar Innen and Humanoid like base with like Razork controlling like the game. I think one of the good things that I was not anticipating is how much like of a similar page June and Razork are, and how much of a buy-in there already is to like them two like playing together. Now Noah has just been like island and just discarded to the side, and I don't think he will be getting any, outside of like lane prio, he'll be getting any resources allocated to him. But there's like a lot of upside in terms of like, even if like lanes go like poorly or they fuck up plays and stuff like that, like Fnatic always seem to be going on to like the next thing, and I can see there's like a coherency to the consecutiveness of like their ideas. They don't ever actually look like panicked like they would before, where they would like lose a big team fight in a big way, and then rather than just like flipping it into the next fight, or Razork or Humanoid getting caught on like a side lane, it's way more like coherent and like logical. They look way more refined than I thought they would ever go, and I actually think they're like the major dark horse of the playoffs that could possibly win. The joke is like I actually think Humanoid's been very, very good this split, but it's like, can you play a Corki game from start to end without like ending like at one point? It's like And he's always got like something like something in him that makes him do it. It's either like a package or a fail flash or something like
Do you know one
that.
weird thing about him, mate, is when people think of the caps and craps a lot of that is just in lane. He would just die or hold flash for no reason. Humanoids is always, he just goes roaming into fog of war. Do you know what I mean? Like, or like you say, just charges in. That's what's weird. His ints actually just seem like, it's like almost like someone knocks his arm and he presses the button or something.
Yeah, or like as I'm saying, he has like the Merwin 1v1 against the Varus
Oh,
top,
sure.
and he misses not every skill shot, like 6 of them. It's like, oh come on. So I actually think this team's like mega dangerous going in. They're one thing I would like to highlight is they have like their own like idea on draft, and that's one thing I really loved about the LEC this year. I think like the ceilings came down a lot. I don't think that any of the teams are as good as G2, but the floor has really came up, and all the top teams are really different from each other. So like how they like match into each other is super interesting. So like Fnatic has this massive priority in like bot push and like countering support to ensure bot push, like Flex and June's champion pool, you know, they played the Nico, but they love unconditional engage, the Vi for Razork, you know, the Zinjao, like these types of things paired with like these pokes. And you know, Oscar's like probably one of the most prevalent team fight Cassante players where it doesn't matter what like state the game is, he can like snatch a win off of you on that champion. So I think they're like a super dangerous team, and they're a lot better than their record shows.
The funny thing is, I actually also think I can tie this to what we were talking about with BDS. Because what's funny is, even though this team, it's actually the support they changed, not the ADC, they've also flipped the dynamic. Like everyone remembers when Noah came in, there was all this hype, like he's the sleeper best ADC in Europe no one knows about. And then that first week, it was like, holy shit, he hasn't even died. Like, what the fuck? This guy is the truth. And then I always tell people, Monty is the first one who nailed that stock to short it the whole way.
Oh.
Because basically, after that, we've all just been living off like, oh, but I remember he was really sick. That was like weeks and weeks. And then now it's ages ago when that was. Like, now he's just like some okay LEC player. And in fact, in their team, they don't even look like they try to play around him, mate. Like, I'm with you. This is like, you may as well be in like season 3 here, boys. This is just solo lane Fnatic with a jungler who has agency. Like, what do you want? It's the old school Fnatic formula, innit?
He's San. He's actually OMG San, by the way. If anyone knows, like, he is unironically San. He has been, like, that is who he has become. Where, like, Humanoid is cool and Oscar is going, like, and their jungler does whatever the fuck he wants. Like, he has been absolutely...
Thing is, though, just like I was a massive fan of Loveling, dude, I actually like this version of Fnatic, though, because what's cool about this one is, it is like a Razork team. This just fucking unleashes Razork. And by the way, we all saw, even when the team was flawed, that his mechanics clearly are just fucking really good. And so this guy can win you games, mate. Like, as much as people think he's like some sort of like emotional wreck, it doesn't even seem like that's a problem now. Now he just looks good in these matches.
And here's the other, like, really, like, scary thing. So, like, first of all, and so what I don't put a lot like a stock in it, but it's something to look at slowly over time. You used to, when they went to Worlds, you would listen to like the voice comms, and Razork's voice comms were disturbing. They were shocking how like sporadic and out of control they were over even the most minor thing. These comms are really controlled from Razork. The ones are showing anyway, the ones are advertising to us, where it's a lot more like controlled, or a lot more stable. He's like calling and listening to other people, and the flow is a lot more like natural, and it makes a lot more like sense. The one of the big ones that I actually do think like people are gonna have to kind of like watch out for with the Fnatic is, even though, you know, I think their drafting priority is a little bit strange, it's not like what I would do, there is a lot of depth to their like play. Like Oscar in super deep champion pool. You know, like Noah is probably the most limited person on the team. June plays all like the meta supports. Humanoid has shown like a prevalence for like Corki. He had good games on the Azir. He played the Akali. He's also showed the Hui. And the other thing is even on, I thought the new map would make it worse. It took there literally being a new fucking rift for Humanoid and Razork to finally work out how to be on the same page as each other. Because for me, outside of like map play, they're like 2v2 on the map. Outside of like Niski and Isma is like the best. Like actually like killing and targeting and like playing for each other and their advantages, I think they've been really good. And here's the thing, what I can't say about them. This team, if Oscar and Razork or Humanoid have mares, can't win games. They're star players. They're like good players. Have to play well. if they like have just like pure moments, or they have like fuck ups, or they're like not as good on any specific day, they will not be, and they can actually go like further down than a lot of teams, because even though I think they've got really good like mid-game like principles, a lot of it still is like based around like those individuals like not tilting, not inting, and like assessing the map and stuff. And so they've got to be on form for it to like work.
Yeah, I would actually say, by the way, I'm actually with you. Even though every single segment about Fnatic on all the shows began like they don't have any chemistry between Razork and Yuma, that's actually somewhat changed in the BO1s. Look, it's only the BO1 so far.
Yeah.
I've got to see like a series with, but so far it's looking a lot better, way better than before, especially because Humanoid is a little bit more up and down, but they can both be really strong players. So the idea that sometimes they can play together, that's big. I also do think Oscarinin has like just split on split shown to be like sort of a revelation. Like my analogy would be like this, because the joke is anytime I ever say a Fnatic player's not good, they go, you just hate Fnatic. Even though the joke is upset was in Fnatic, you daft cunt. Whatever. I just know no one else can say that word in esports. I just get too addicted to it, mate. But basically, the point is, when people I actually think play well in Fnatic, I mean, I was probably the biggest Swords fanboy of all time. I am a fan of them. So the joke is, I actually think Oscarinin in Fnatic is way more of a legit revelation rookie player than Adam was, mate. Like, I used to think even back then, like, you guys can't see how limited the Adam guy is. Or, look, he had like fucking Rosewap Bwipo just holding his hand half the game. He had like fucking the best bot lane. Like, he had fucking Niski as his mid laner. Like, this is like, he couldn't ask for a better platform, to use your G2 analogy, for Adam when he came in the LEC. The difference is Oscarinin just got dropped in a team, mate. And every split, he looks better and better. And actually now, this is where people forget. Not only, if you notice in this convo, we've got a fucking bad crop of ADCs at the moment in LEC. It's not a strong position. Like, it's dog shit compared to the Asian region if you watch those. But mate, the joke is, top lane's suddenly gotten good in Europe. This was our shittest role for ages. That's why I could just literally not even look at the lineups and just go, Odoamne will be top 3. Because I didn't need to. Like, his flaw meant he would just be good. The joke now is, he probably isn't top 3. Like, actually, you look who's out there.
Really far away from
There's some really good players. That's why Broken Blade isn't like some star, even though he's on G2. I actually think Oscarinin, there's another thing, mate. The joke is, people like him, I mean, from the BO1s, I even have to put the dreaded Adam in. They actually are the best top laners right now at LEC.
So, 2 things to pick up on there, right? So, Oscarinin, I bought a shit ton of Oscarinin stocks, because when you see top laners, they're like play pattern, and they're like, it's so much easier to teach a top laner like laning and like risk aversion than it is to teach him like an eye for like team fight and target selection. Right. It's something I learned that like Kelsey Moser like talked about like a lot, and like when she described it and stuff, and I was like, oh, that actually like makes a lot of sense, because I've had the exact same thing in like Dota. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So like when Oscar, he's a dog in lane. This guy's laning fucking blows. It's so shit, by the way. Like, it's still terrible. Like, see when Wonder like banged him out on that Rumble like Udyr matchup, I was like, Oscar, what the fuck are you doing? It's painful to watch. But the thing is, I know 10 minutes from now, even though like that is like, it shouldn't be like that, but it like is, the effect he's going to have on the game in terms of like his team fighting and stuff like that is so much better. And at the end of the day, you know, like, being 900 down in like a lane is like bad, but it's okay if you kill the entire enemy backline on Rumble. Like, it doesn't really matter. Oh. Like dead people are dead. Like, that gold lead like disappears. So, you know what I mean? Just, you know, the old M5 thing, just kill them. When you see a Korean on your screen, everyone was like trying to mind game it, like, oh, yes. And there are people behind them, like, you know, Darren, Genja, like, they're all just like, just kill them. So don't think about it too much. And sometimes overthinking it can get it. The one thing I would say is he is blessed to play with Razork, because Razork, again, is just one of the junglers that somehow manages to control 3 lanes, and the pressure on him to like execute is insane. It's why he will just have like the slip ups, because what he's trying to do is very, very difficult. It really is. Like, him, Yike, and Aloya are like and Yankos as well, to give him be fair, because like, if we'll get to him.
And I know what you mean. The joke is, it should be that meme of like, you know, the fucking dam over the city, and like all those junglers are the dam, and then like ints are the thing shit behind it. And like, if you take that jungler, because I'll even frame it that way. Here's my win condition for fucking Fnatic: Razork's mental must hold up. Because mate, if his mental goes, then forget about it. The whole thing's going to unravel.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the thing, and him being more of a leader and like calling in the game around like his own like thing, I think is all like good. Because, you know, if you're like constantly in control of the game, you know, it's like has a good and bad, because if you like, you send out, you're going to send the team, the ship goes down with the captain. But I'm a lot more positive on like Fnatic than a lot of other people outside of Fnatic fans. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to them. I said it in like my tweet for the MVP, like them, Mad Lions, and like BDS, like they've got a lot to prove for me in like the playoffs. Like, can they make it work? Because I hate BO1s. I think they're fucking useless. So series play is the only thing that I care about, and these are the teams that I think will be really interested in the series play, because there's players on their teams that can they like get it together, like what I mean, can they do it in those like key games, those pressure moments.
By the way, I even think BO1's worse specifically in MOBAs than even CS.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like it in CS because I just want, obviously, like less variance. But at least there's not the draft component. Like, the draft component just ruins BO1s, because here's the problem. The reason why a BO5 or a BO3 isn't just 3 BO1s or 5 is you would sometimes never do your BO1 draft in any of the games in the BO5. I mean, maybe if, like, you're egoing on them when you're 2-0 up and you want to just fuck around with the cheese. But, like, you will just do shithead, stupid drafts way more than the BO1. I'm with you on that one. If we pivot and talk a bit about Heretics, right, I'm going to have to go from the other side now, because this is a team I actually think they're almost like blue balls in me or fucking with me a little bit, because the first like week and a half or 2 weeks, I was like, actually, bro, this is sort of what I dreamed of with this team. Like, maybe this is going to be like the sleeper challenger to G2, which is what everyone wants. Of like, because also what you think to yourself is, if you think of the top side they have, bro, you get them guys into a final against G2. They're like the only players that would believe they could win, or would conceive it was possible, or could play mind games with Caps, or with Broken Blade, or with Mika. They could do that in a way the others couldn't. And that was there, and it hasn't gone completely. But man, did that last week really sour me. I actually thought there was a world where they could have just 3-0'd that last week, and then it's like, fuck, now we're cooking. And then that week they just blew a bunch of games, and even ones where it's like they're winnable, but they just fuck it up. My biggest problem is this. Look, I'm never going to go as far as the others do, because I also have access to pro players, guys. Like, I can actually just go and ask the best mid laners, how is Perks laning in Vitality in 2022? And they'll just tell me. And spoiler, even when every fan goes, he's shit, some of the best laners in the world are telling me, like, actually his lane phase is underrated, or he's doing, this matchup, he was playing out well, they hinted at this point. Like, so it was never as bad as people thought. But I will say, this has been another semi-sus Perks split by the end. He had some nightmare games. And so the real problem at the moment is, I want the whole top side. At the moment, though, I'll tell you what, even though GiantX had like a couple of bad games, he's still fine. Wonder, I actually think, this is where narratives just become too permanent. Bros, what's going on? Like, it's like 2021 Wonder broke everyone's brain. You're all just trying to tell me. You actually act like Wonder has the Perks narrative of like, maybe he's sus and not as good. This guy was dynamite in Fnatic. He was even good when he came back last year and helped them go to the fucking Worlds. And I actually think if you watch now, he's one of the better players in this. He might be the best player in this team, mate. Flackhead's pretty good. Keire, obviously, is still sus, but he even had those miracle games that weren't shit out of nowhere. The actual cool thing to me is the Wonder angle. Because I'll tell you one thing. You know that famous rule in League that goes, you don't chase a singed? There needs to be another rule. If you're playing Heretics, my rule literally for my players would be, we don't dive Wonder. What do you mean, coach? What if No, what if, not if we're I love top lane carries, right? I have watched them all play. This is one of the most famous qualities of the best top lane carries. It's because they're carries, the other team goes, like, it's solo queue, we better keep him down early. Yes, but that's also, like in the same way Adam knows every matchup into. They've played that their whole life. Their whole life is people diving them. And mate, people every time, go to Reddit, every time Wonder does a crazy outplay under tower, 1v2, doesn't die and gets kills. Every time they'll explain, like when they're explaining away sick like Zed play, like, it was all mistakes from the enemy. Well, why does it happen every time against this one guy? I'll tell you why. Because one, he is fucking goated at like those little shimmies and side steps that fuck you up when you think you're getting the auto attacking that you need extra. And then secondly, mate, he clearly, no joke, doesn't mind being dove. It's actually weird because most people panic, and some of the top laner that panics and makes it easy. He actually does sort of like, he knows, like, right, I might die now, so how do I fuck it up for them as much as possible? And he's so good at it, mate. To this day, he's so good at it. He's so cracked at that one skill. Like, if I play his teams, I'll just bang the other lanes. I'll go for bot lane all the time, Just leave this guy on his own. Because when you go in like that, the joke is, let's keep him down early. And then you've just given him like a free kill under tower when he's pushed in, like, that doesn't work. And I know people are going to go, you just make it too absurd. I've just seen it too much, guys. Too many people have failed at that. Too many people have a shit story. But if the guy just came in 1 second, and they never do, this guy outplays every 1v2, I swear.
My favorite one of this year was like when Nuck and Adam were
Oh,
dying.
it was hilarious, wasn't it? I know.
And Adam like all attacks him, and like he's expecting all attack to like kill, right? And then Wonder survives and walks away. And instead of walking out of turret,
oh, it's mad, isn't it? He goes back in.
He's like, motherfucker!
I know.
I'm coming back. He's like, I'm coming. You know, every single risk-based analysis. You know, if the Goldman Sachs they were sitting there, like,
wasn't that even the one where like the other player hadn't even yet gone under it, and then they still went in? You know when they do that, where it's like they won't abort it, they just go in anyway. So what are we doing now? But my analogy there, here's the meme for you, is that's like that shit bad writing definitely wasn't from the books. You know in Game of Thrones, where they just inexplicably took the Stannis Baratheon character, and then they were sort of like, sir, but if we go now, all the troops will die. It's like, fuck it, just go anywhere. And you're like, what's this? Who's writing this plot? Like, why would he just sort of go, yeah, fuck it, just into it, just kill ourselves in it? Like, what? That doesn't even make sense. Like, this is inexplicable, yeah.
I was like thinking like the Dirty Harry moment and the guy being like, I've got to know. It was like a full 44 Magnum like aimed at his chest. It's like Adam turned him round to auto attack Wonder one more time. It's like, she was just like, Adam, no. He's like, I've got to know. It's like,
sure.
So like, yeah. So I was, you know, and it was like.
What about the wider Heretics team then? Give me your takes. I get the feeling you're a bit out on them, right? I have the sense. Come on.
I'm out on them in the idea of them being like a top team. But like the sad thing for me is like, you know, when I looked at the way I described Heretics is I was like, I didn't think they were gonna like do like that much in the split. But what funny was is like they are going to catch so many throws. Like inexperienced, like new formed teams like entering into them, and because of the really experienced top side, I thought they were like you know what I mean, going to be able to abuse people or like catch people out. And it really hasn't like kind of worked out that way. It's kind of just they've kind of just been like a team like a team that's prone to like early game leads on like specific champions with like decent understanding of like lane matchups, and then they would just have like a series of like key errors. Like for example in the BDS game, you know, Wonder gets a kill on Adam like top, Perks is doing fine into Nuclear Ant on, I think it's the Tristana, and then, you know, I mean, Perks inexplicably like fails like rocket jumps, they get like caught in the Wombo combo by like BDS, it's like the most obvious stuff ever, and it's just like a series, like the reason they lose to like Vitality is Karza goes tank Varys and like Gatling guns like everyone in the team, like, you know what I mean, these are like sore ones, and the thing is like, I actually think, not to go so much against the grain, I think Perks has like been all right, but it's the inexplicableness or like the confusion and like these like errors. I wouldn't expect them from like a controlled, experienced player. They're like those of like a rookie. You know what I mean? Where it's like they're like wildly flailing or like flashing forward or into positions and pockets that just like can't exist. I expected this team to be a lot more coherent than it actually is. The only person who's like been saved in this like was a narrative that was told to me was like, oh, Kaiser will be really good with Jankos because Jankos will talk for Kaiser and communicate, and that's what Kaiser likes. And like, know what? Like, I don't know if that is the case, but Kaiser's like career looks like he's going to get to play more splits in the LEC. Like, well, congratulations, Kaiser, you've done it. Him and Flat are nothing special. Flat is a very balanced, like lukewarm, like static ADC.
He just does his job.
Yeah, but he's got like a decent champion pool in the sense of like, you know, the Senna Seraphine needs to be banned. He can threaten the Draven. So he has, even though he's a very just mediocre ADC, he has upside in terms of his champion pool. So there is that. I was just a bit disappointed in like just how disconnected and incoherent like the team is. But I would generally agree. I think Wonder has been the best player on the team along with Flack. I was quite impressed with his understanding of like Udyr. He seems to have gotten it the best in the league. You know, it doesn't help that like mid jungle 2v2 is like harder to pull off for like Jankos, like Perks, where like Jankos was like famously good at playing for his like mid laners, but now it's harder in general to like, do that.
The thing is, though, that is also the obvious hole that the team currently has. Like, if I had to say a win condition for this thing, 'cause the players are there, in my opinion, it is that, like, Jankos and Perks together have to play better. Because there's another thing.
Yeah.
I'm obviously hoping that they'd instantly flash back to, like, 2020 and they'd be like, right, they're back. Like, it's like when the spring split. Like, remember when Jankos was the MVP? Like, this would be dope. Like, for some reason, bizarrely, they're the ones that have had the disconnect, haven't they?
Yeah, they really have. And I think it's... I don't want to attribute to anything, but like Perks for the last couple of seasons has had a bit of a disconnect with his junglers for a variety, like Bo, which I put down to like language and like Boanism, but now I'm seeing him with like Yankos, and it's like continuing. And the only person I'd really give like the benefit of the doubt to is like Yankos, because Yankos really is trying to like plug holes a lot of the time and like sinking shit.
Is that something from your show, Boanism? What the fuck is that? What's a Boanism?
Like Boisms, just like
oh right,
yeah. So like,
whatever.
I just like I have a little bit of sympathy for him, but you know, at the end of the day, like some of the stuff in like games like not being as great, but I think in general like map play and like playing to his lanes has been like pretty good. I was more underwhelmed with just how these players like came together. They kind of look like disparaging parts rather than a coherent like force.
Thing is, though, that because they have this massive bank of experience, this is one of the teams I do think has a chance to glow up, though, in the playoffs. That's why I'm kind of hyped still. Right, obviously, there's 2 teams left because we'll say fuck the last 2. There's not enough time anyway. So obviously, Madden, GiantX.
I know, mate. I know.
I'm waiting for that to just start to sound normal, because let's be real. Like by the way, Fnatic's a pretty shit name too, but it's just so established now you don't mind it. GiantX, you're gonna have to do a lot till that starts to sound legit. Like right now, that doesn't sound good. I'll put it this way. I will say it is like that could be an LPL name. It's shit, but in a way where it's like just generically shit.
You're talking to one of your boys about like a past series of girlfriends, and it's like, remember the GiantX one?
There you go.
It's just like, there we are. That's it.
Right, so, obviously, the flaw... We'll do GiantX first. We'll end on the mad one. Right, the obvious problem here is this, Keire. This is actually the funniest, but I think also the fairest way to say this, is when we're about to flame GiantX, you actually don't deserve this. In a sane world, you should have been 9th, and therefore you would have avoided this flame. You wouldn't be in the playoffs. Your problem, actually, is that Rogue and Carmine Corp were so much worse than anyone thought that now you actually have some cameras watching you in a playoff match. And spoiler, it ain't going to be great. Like, this is going to be, like, I'm just going to say it right now, this is 2 losses and straight out in 8th place. Like, what else is it? Like, the problem with this team is, mate, they have nothing in this team. You know what? Even fucking Rogue, who aren't in the playoffs, had, like, some fucking mechanical players who might win their lane or like, like a solo kill someone. Like, I don't know what GiantX is supposed to have. Like, I actually would struggle on this team, Monty fucking 2013 style, to even do like we're going into the Summer's Rift, so here are the win conditions. I don't even know what the win conditions would be. What? I actually don't even know how they've won any games so far, Keire. Like, I actually have to say, the one thing I'll say is this, props for getting in the playoffs, but I just think you're now immediately in record time going out the playoffs. Like, I actually don't have any, like, I'm not even dissing them, but I think it's just kind of a worthless roster for me. Where are you at?
The win condition is this: get Jackies onto an assassin on counter pick, favourable matchup, and bring as many people to his lane as fucking possible.
Right.
And do like the perk thing on like Vitality or like on like C9 where you just bring bodies and you get a gold lead that you know you can move around the map, right? And just kill people. Like, because to me, like that's the player like Jackie's was. So like I'll run through the players. Like Odo, worst year like ever for him. He decided to have like one carry game on like Gnar. And this is the thing I said to Rich. I have to be more critical of Odo than I usually would because he's getting like counter pick and then not doing anything with it and not playing the matchups to the full like ability of what I have to expect in the specific context that it is a counter pick, right? Yes. Peach somehow is the best player on this
If people don't know, by the way, it used to be the opposite for him. The joke was he's the guy who'd like blind some dog shit in the top lane just to let everyone else have the picks. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right, Peach is somehow the best player on this team. I can't believe I'm actually saying
that. That alone, you could just end the segment there, but yeah, go on.
The only thing is I actually think there's upside to Jackie's because he doesn't look like a scared rookie who like doesn't play to like the stage. He actually plays it. Put it this way, Nuck is now a good player, okay?
Yeah, true.
But Nuck, back in time, Jackie's is better than Nuck was. Like all that. Now, that is not to say that Jackie's is going to just go upwards. I do not believe that. But he's got that same thing with Oscar, where he has problems. As like Lennon's a bit dicey sometimes. He can have like poor like team fights, like sporadic gold advantage carrying. But he actually looks for the plays. He's like going for the back line. And yeah, though he misses it, he fucks it up. It's like it's so much easier to teach the mid laner. They were able to teach Abadagi to lane on Azir. I'm sure we can get Jackie's over the line. Patrick is like Patrick. He decided to not take winter off this season. Thank you, Patrick, for not wasting everyone's fucking time with your atrocious level of play that you decided to have in winter and spring. You decided to actually take this like relatively seriously. thank you, I guess. You're okay, you're fine. Like, big champion pool, ADC, click on people. Ignar's like interesting in terms of like, he's got that like that rep for being limited and not playing like enchanters. But like I think when like when the going's good, it's like good. He has like some nice engages on like Alistar. The good thing is having a player. This is like Huhi and like NA. I always give him props. Where these players are actually, in terms of engaging and finding engage angles, even though they're in worse regions, they are actually like very, very good at that specific metric. So they're able to like win games sometimes that they usually aren't, because they'll find really interesting engage angles. This team doesn't look. I had this team third, and the reason is when you keep like pieces together, like I rated that really highly. The highest team that I had of just new players was Vitality. I had them fourth, and that was based on like star power. I was just like the individual players looked like really like good to me, and it kind of made sense. But then Hylissang arrived. GiantX was high because like when I seen like Peach, Patrick, and Odramni like playing together, the other guys it was more like plug and play. You're gonna have a rookie mid laner, not ideal, but what I mean. The coaching was able to bring Abadagi around, so I thought it would apply to here. They've just been very like disparaging. Their team fight setups aren't great. There's a lot to be said here. They've got a lot to like work on, but I think they're going to get banged out relatively quickly. They could maybe make like an interesting lower bracket run against some of the lower seeded teams, but I wouldn't. Any of the good teams that are sent down to the lower bracket, I would expect them to get demolished.
Yeah, the biggest problem I have, like I say, is I'm actually even with you. The joke is actually the Jackies guy wasn't even being bad. He's had a couple of games that looked good. He's even had times where even when the team was looking, in fact, for such a shit team, he's actually been better than I expected. I was worried personally that this was another one like. I know people are going to go, that's aged badly. Just wait. The playoffs is coming. Just like the Frescoy guy in Mad Lions. Spoiler, he will not in 3 years be in the LEC contending for the top five. And he won't be like, oh my God, like there'll be no nook conversation about him. I'm telling you right now, that player's just whatever. So I actually thought the Jackies guy, I have to say of the two of them, I'd take the Jackies guy all day fucking day long. This guy can actually carry a game, mate. What are you talking about? He actually has like skills that I still don't even know. And the joke is, Mad Lions must really be the power of friendship. I don't really know if they're even fucking winning these games. So I think we've done enough on GX. As we say, I don't think anyone has them doing anything. Mad Lions is obviously a way more fun team to talk about because that whole narrative has played out. They have had some aspects that look like it just was there from game one because they have players that have played together and then the other pieces have fit together. Like, for example, one thing I said on something Instagram, but I'm kind of shocked by, is they actually seem like not only have they fit around El Yoya, but he actually seems fine with them. I thought he would be like frustrated that for me, they are a mid-table team and quite frankly, I think they'll be exposed in the playoffs. Like, he actually seems to be vibrant with this project, mate. It seems like for whether this is where he wants to play, whether he just likes to speak Spanish, whether he likes having the coach who's apparently a friend of his, whatever it is, it's got El Yoya looking at his best pretty much. So listen, you'll never look as good as you were when you got Humanoid and fucking some of the players in past teams, obviously. But in the light of what team he's got, it's about the best you could hope for. And then I actually do think, I've got to give it up. The Merwin guy is actually, he's a mixture of like exciting and he's actually bordering on potentially being good, mate. Like some of these games, I actually do think, even though people think it's like a meme because of the champion pool, some of these games actually look good though. Like he actually looks like this is actually a player I actually think will be in the LEC. I don't think, put it this way, I think the fucking ADC is gone forever. Like he's another one. They made an ADC. Enjoy your split because I don't know how long. I don't even know if you're going to be at the end of the year. You'd have to in the future if they keep signing you, they're not going to be a top team. Where are you at though? You're not feeling Merwin?
So the interesting thing is my intelligence gatherers in the lower leagues have assured me that Merwin is like this all the time. This isn't just like something new. This guy, he was like very top playing.
Oh, right.
Like
right.
This guy, he will play. He is, you're sitting in draft. It's like, oh, I'll win this top lane matchup as long as they don't pick X. It's like Merwin is the guy that is always picking X.
Right.
He is always, you know what I mean? So I think he's mega interesting. When they had that Fiddlesticks game, I actually put a lot of that loss onto like a lawyer not using like the Nocturne ult at like the proper like timings, and there was a bit of disconnect in the teamwork. It was quite a complex like draft to like execute, and I thought it was really exciting, really ballsy. Liked it a lot. Frescove, the only thing I could say that was good about him is when I seen him, he was given like the very, very high, not the high execution, but the executable like lanes, the one into perks on the Rise, where as LeBlanc, you blow the Rise's flash and then it's just a series of kills after that. he actually like he blew the flash, then he did just chain kill. Like Perks, it's like,
Yeah.
what, good job, but like he's very mediocre. I don't think, put it this way, whenever I start talking about mids in terms of mediocrity, I don't know what to say. Like, as mid lane, you're supposed to be one of the best players on the team usually.
Sure.
I had the exact same complaint of Nuck. It's not something new. Until Nuck was a good player this split, I basically always said you need to either he needs to get better or you need to replace him because mid lane has to be good. I'm actually a little bit higher on Super. I think Super's played like pretty well considering the like Merwin has a little bit of the problem of like Osgrinnen, where like he'll have like these pressure matchups, but he won't like release like the valve, and he will just keep like taking the trade, taking the play, and he like pulls Aloya like away, not so much away, but like to the top side like a lot of the time. And Super and Alvaros do like seem like already that they're playing like pretty well together.
I mean, for me, the problem with that one though is I sort of take it that like the Alvaro side's the better side of that matchup. Personally, I think he's the one in the lane that's the better one. But I don't claim to be an expert on support.
No, mate, like the thing is that the good thing about this team is they said they're going to bring this core through. They brought this core through, and it like what I mean, they're not like crying and like bitching about the fact. And I think it's good because I think you do actually see the upside of having and bringing through like the cores. Now, will the individual levels like continue to like flourish because the LEC teams are going to get better in spring and better in summer, and are these guys going to be able to keep up with the pace, or are they preying on like how disjointed a lot of the teams are right now in winter? I think they look really, really good. I think a lot of their drafting's really smart. I think it's really cool if like they're going to go into these BO3s and play those ballsy drafts. I think that's like super exciting. But the problem is the burden of execution is really, really high. You've seen it backfire, so that's why I'm really interested. I think it's kind of hard to plug what level they're going to be at. The one thing I would say is I do have a bit of concerns about them when they're behind and on the back foot. They don't look like the most coherent team and like getting back into games when gold leads go against them. They're like mid game when they're like behind isn't like iron tight. They do tend to like the game does like snowball like against them. But the front running was like good to see. And Aloya does like recognize, seem to understand like lane advantages the same way as like the Merwin Fiddle. He was like favouring that side because it was getting communicated to him supposedly that that's where he should be going. And you also seen the Friscovi pick into the. I think like Aloya, as I said, he has to be very, very good. And I think he's looked a lot better on this team than he did on Mad Lions like last year during like the regular seasons, even though he won a split. So that's like an upside seeing Aloya good again. I'm not sure how much this team will do, but I'm interested to see them play, and I'm actually excited, like, because their first matchup, is Mad Lions versus Fnatic. I think that's actually a banger matchup because basically, like, it's who can basically prove that they're kind of like things the realist, like who's got the most stock in them, and that team is basically going to instantly play G2 unless like GX upsets them in another world. And you're going to get to see them versus G2, and that is like real. Whatever 2 games, whichever team's going to play it, is going to be super interesting what they come up with for those like games.
Because the problem I have to just address that Super angle goes like this. I think if you go and look, a lot of the games when he did really, he had a fucking pentakill if people don't know. A lot of those games, if you go and look, now in hindsight, are against the worst teams in the league. These are the fucking shitter teams that no one gets, Carmine Corp, Rogue. And then also, by the way, one of his worst games was against fucking GX. Like that was the one where he was like running it down. So my problem is I get why on the screen people see him getting kills and they're like, wow, he's super good as well. Whereas the difference is, like, again, I don't claim to be like, I do think, by the way, jungle and support are the hardest roles for an observer to know what they're doing. Because first of all, jungle, you don't know what they're commenting, you don't know what people are asking. And then for support, like, the problem is naturally your eye looks at people doing damage, not people doing things like cleansing them, like fucking peeling, tanking damage. You just keep looking at the guy. You look at the ADC basically in the fight, not at the support who's helping or hurting him. So all I'll say is, like, when I tried to like look at like big fights, I actually did think the Alvaro guy, I think actually, if people are hyping any other players in this team, I think actually the fucking Alvaro guy had some pretty good games. He looked like he actually had sort of like a level of depth I wasn't expecting. Like, here's the difference. The Super guy looked good, good. Well, that's unfair. If there's 10 ADCs, he looked all right if I like aggregate his whole performance. My problem is this. It felt like that's just who he is, mate. Like, I didn't watch him I watched the EU Masters, that's it. But that just feels like that's who he is as a thing. The Alvaro guy and the Moon guy look like they maybe have another level. That's why I say I feel like they can actually be LEC players beyond this. This isn't just about this split. They can be here for a while. They could be in a different team. The joke is the Moon guy. I'd pick him up for a non-Spanish team. He just looks like a fucking, if you want a really dynamic top lane who's sort of like a fucked up Spanish whip or something, maybe he's your dude. Maybe that's who you're picking, right? So obviously the last question, we'll end on this, is where does this team finish though? Because as you say, there could be an exciting matchup right on the gate with Fnatic. So where do they end up? Where are they going to go?
One second. Theoretically, let's have a look at so they lose here, then that means they're most likely to draw bro, they could actually just lose both because they could draw lose to Fnatic, then instantly draw Heretics or SK and VIT, and I don't think they're favoured to win any of them. But I could end up in another Spanish compilation video saying this right now. So I just think it's so hard to place them with a player like Merwin.
Here's what I'm scared about. I'm with you when you said that list until you got to Vitality. Of the three teams, if there's one that I wouldn't trust, it's Vitality. But the other two I'm with you. I think SK, logically, I think Fnatic, SK, and Heretics should all beat them. So I'm with you. They probably should come second or last, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll get one playoff win, because then if they're going to play G2, I expect them to lose to G2, and then they'll lose to the winner of the next one. So yeah, I think they'll find maybe one BO3 win, then pop out. But they're a spicy team,
Yeah.
If there's a version they can execute some of these cool drafts. One big one is Merwin's actually a Karma top laner already, and that's going to be broken on the next one. So that has to be permabanned against him already. If people slip up on that one, good luck. So whatever.
Right, as I pointed out on the last one, someone called Dom, who wasn't even around anymore. He just bounced, so we're bouncing. See ya, we're off on the pogo sticks.